This is a presentation of SBE 15, New York City.
NAB, for those folks who do go or don't go, or like me who get stuck in a booth and don't get to see anything, is an overwhelming amount of products to see and innovations, and Paul's going to tell us all about it. So I'm going to throw it to Paul now, Paul McLane from Radio World, to tell us all about what we saw or didn't see at NAB 2023 in Vegas.
No, thank you, Jeff. It's a privilege to be invited back. I guess I did okay last year. If you ask me back, I didn't use too many cuss words. I'm going to see if I can get this slideshow working. You see your logo on there?
Yes.
Great.
And everyone, please mute yourself unless you're asking a question. Thanks.
So thank you again for having me. I'm going to try to give you a flavor of the show and a sampler of the storylines that Radio World has been covering. And this is mostly about radio, although some of the material crosses over to TV and beyond. I like to start first with a look at broader industry storylines in regulation and technology that were on the minds of people at the show, and then we can look at a sampler of of specific products that caught my eye. To me, there are two obvious candidates for the storyline of the year. Keith was asking me about this earlier, what I thought was the story of the year. Now, artificial intelligence is clearly the number one topic. AI in radio isn't exactly new. It's already used in various ways, mostly behind the scenes. And we've even seen synthetic voices being demoed on the show floor for a couple of years now. But of course, AI really blew up in the wider business world over the wintertime with all the attention on generative AI tools like DALL-E and ChatGPT. And then in February, Futuri grabbed everybody's attention with its announcement of Radio GPT. That's Daniel Anstandig, the CEO. They called Radio GPT the first fully AI-powered radio host. This is a system that lets a station create multiple synthetic host voices with various personalities and then build a radio show where AI hosts talk about local trending topics. At the show, Radio GPT was demoed in a suite, not a booth, but you could learn about it in various sessions. So I'm going to give you just a quick promotional sample via audio, and these are all synthetic voices.
Radio GPT.
Immerse your radio listening experience with artificial intelligence.
100% AI.
We'll assemble compelling information.
We'll offer highly engaging data.
And we'll do it 24/7.
I'm completely AI.
So am I.
Me too. We all are.
Sorry about that little glitch there. That was me, not the AI. So obviously this is fascinating and scary for all the reasons I don't have to explain to anybody who works in radio. Will it take away AI jobs, DJ jobs? Will the AI take away DJ jobs? And even Futuri acknowledges that it probably will. But the company's really leaning into this idea that this is a tool to be live and local. Well, how is that even close to possible? This is how the company explains it. It links to your automation system and uploads your music logs so it can generate the breaks. Then the tool that they call Topic Pulse monitors 250,000 online sources and includes social and news content to figure out what's trending in your market. This is kind of their secret sauce here. Then it applies GPT-4 technology to create a script around that, and then a separate synthetic voice that it comes through and it generates the voices. So the bot jock can talk about your city's weather and sports. It can tease your playlist. It can interact with your other AI hosts. And you can give each of these voices personalities. You could say that you wanted one of them to be a millennial, a male who has a hyper personality. The next one, you'd say, that's a female. She's more laid back. She's a baby boomer. And it can do all of this in multiple languages too. So this is going to raise all sorts of questions. But of course, the ones just in the radio side are, is it convincing on a large scale? Should you tell your listeners that some of the voices that they're hearing are AI voices? And just how far will radio companies go with using it? Futuri's argument is that we should think about this as a super producer or a co-host, and it can free up real employees to be more efficient or build relationships with listeners. I'm cynical. I've been in this business a long time. I know that commercial radio companies are always looking to cut costs where they can. So we'll see. But Futuri's argument is, look, AI is coming anyway, and radio has to compete with it. The same day that Radio GPT was announced in February, Spotify introduced its own AI DJ, same day. Now, if you follow AI news, you know that some leading tech executives have called for a pause on the rollout of artificial intelligence. But while some companies might choose to go slow with it, iHeartMedia apparently is not among them. This is after the show. This is subsequently. This picture was taken at the show. That's Pittman with, Angela Yee, the podcaster. But he said this on his recent business call: "We plan to use artificial intelligence to its fullest. I think AI can fundamentally change the cost structure of the company. I think we'll do stuff faster and our costs will be lower. We think AI will be a major productivity enhancer for American businesses, and we plan to use it to its fullest." Didn't say exactly what that would mean. We know a few of the things that they're doing, but I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more of it. Futuria is not the only company, of course, rolling out AI products. Super Hi-Fi also had a suite in Las Vegas, and it announced a service called Program Director. It's making big claims for it. It says that Program Director reimagines the workflow for curation, programming, and scheduling radio experiences. It uses ChatGPT-2, and it also uses a technology from a company called 11 Labs. One of my writers got a demo of this, and he said they really are taking the quality of automation and making it sound more live and doing mixing better. It's all about the segues, the song overlaps. The system learns what sounds good, and then it takes into consideration beats and pitches and even the gender of the voices to create a more intelligent mix. It's really hard to judge these tools right now. Demos are important, and even getting beyond the demos to what real working enterprises have to say about them. And there's very few companies so far that have been willing to say, yes, we use this tool, and yes, we'll tell you what we think about it. We're still waiting for that kind of feedback. The next few months should be interesting. Other AI applications, just briefly, Radio Workflow has a tool called Write My Ad, and it does exactly that. It writes an ad for you. Another company, Adthos, has a self-service portal where you can log on and create your own AI-generated audio ads. And Enco, which is a company familiar to a lot of us, was already using AI for transcription and translation, but they're increasing their use of AI-based tools. Curtis Leggett, the head of NAB there on the right, he spoke about the potential dangers of artificial intelligence. And now we're talking about the broader world of media, because everybody at the show was talking about AI. It wasn't just radio. He's worried that big tech will take broadcast content without compensating broadcasters for its use. Perfectly legitimately worried about that, given how generative AI works. And he worries about the danger to journalism. But he says there are certainly efficiencies that are to be had by stations and businesses where resources are tight. But Fred Jacobs, the respected consultant, sees a pattern that radio becomes so reliant on new technology and its requirements that it can lose its sense of purpose. Jacobs says that's one reason radio sounds so similar up and down the dial all around the country. And of course, there are much bigger issues with AI beyond radio. Our society is going to have some big, hard questions to answer. Fake voices is the least of it. There's been, of course, a lot of debate about whether artificial general intelligence is possible, whether it can come to pass anytime soon, and whether these machines will eventually think the way you and I use that term. I recommend this book by Mo Gaudat, a former executive at Google X. He has three main conclusions. He says AI is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's going to be smarter than humans, at least as you define it, by super fast and having access to massive amounts of information at once. And what that means for the computer system's capabilities is almost incomprehensible. And he says, look, bad things are going to happen. It's not clear when these machines and these systems are really working together and acting on their original intended programming. It's not clear where that's going to take us or whose interest they'll have at heart. So if all that sounds like science fiction, well, it was science fiction not that long ago, but now he's saying we need to pay attention and we need to be shaping those decisions right now. Stay tuned. The other storyline, of course, is AM radio. Everyone on this call is surely aware. We can't talk about the show without that because it was on everybody's lips. Fans of AM haven't had too much to cheer about, and we already knew that makers of electric vehicles were taking AM radio capability out because it was noisy, that it was great, the AM radio wasn't acting well in electric vehicles, and that it was too expensive for them to filter for that. Senator Ed Markey really raised the profile of this last winter by sending letters to every major car maker and asking them specifically to write back to him on whether they had removed AM radio from electric vehicles or had any plans to do it. He really did radio a big service just by forcing the conversation. And it turned out that at least 8 companies have removed AM from electric vehicles, and others like General Motors didn't answer the question. And then Ford dropped its own little bomb. We learned early this year that gas-powered Mustangs would no longer have AM radio. And this is the quote that Ford put out when news organizations asked about it. Probably not news to anybody anymore, but their main quote was basically, there are all these other ways that listeners to AM stations can get content. Ford will continue to offer these alternatives for customers to hear their favorite AM, radio, music, news, and podcasts as we remove amplitude modulation, the definition of AM in this case, from most new and updated models we bring to market. And that, of course, was just everything came crashing down. So, does that mean the end of AM radio? Broadcast associations, of course, have been responding to this over the last couple of months with a big push. If you read our free Smart Brief newsletter every morning, you know how many different efforts are going on. The NAB launched a campaign to get broadcasters and listeners to tell Congress they want to protect AM, and they put out that number that you could text to tell Congress to keep it, 52886. Other organizations, the National Alliance of State Broadcasters Associations, the National Association of Farm Broadcasting, the National Association of Black-owned Broadcasters have all been weighing in. And the Alliance of State Broadcast Associations did a survey that I thought produced some interesting and fresh information. They went and they surveyed as many AM stations as possible. They got about 1,000, like a quarter of the AM stations in the country almost. And there's this notion that AM radio is dominated by conservative talk, and it's certainly true that there's tons of it. But the survey also found that AM radio formats are more diverse than a lot of people think. 40% of stations have music. That was surprising to me. Classic country, oldies, Spanish, regional, Mexican, and inspirational gospel. And, for religious broadcasters like Salem, AM remains a critical outlet. It's also still the home of sports coverage in major markets. And the state associations also reminded Congress that AM radio still plays that crucial role in the emergency alert system. The engineering community doesn't have to be told what this means, but it's true. Even I have to remind myself when a hurricane or a tornado hits and people lose internet and cell service, what's the first thing the government tells people to do? Tune in a radio. It's still the case, even though it's this old platform, it's still whatever the FEMA tells people are on their website. So the emergency aspects of it are not just a PR campaign, it really exists. The state associations also learned that a lot of AM stations don't have translators. There's hundreds at least of AM stations that don't have translators, and a lot of them don't have their own mobile apps, and they don't participate in online radio aggregation. So it's overly simplistic for car makers to say that people can just find the AM station content that they want on these other platforms. And of course, the story keeps evolving. On Monday, more than 100 members of the House of Representatives sent letters to major car makers asking them to keep AM. And the big news yesterday, it was these two guys, Senator Ed Markey, a Democrat, and Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican, gave their endorsement to the idea that Representative Jeff Gottheimer, had recently put forward, which is to mandate AM radio. New legislation has been introduced in Congress just this week to mandate AM radio in cars. The car makers are going to push back. They put out a strong statement about that. They think it's not appropriate. That's never been the case that Congress required any particular feature like this in a car, not a media feature like this. So we'll see where it goes. And of course, in the background is the picture of, well, if car makers can drop AM, what's to stop them someday from dropping FM? And then what happens? It's just so much easier now for them to do that when the system in the dashboard is a computer operating system rather than a separate receiver. And they can take out and add features even to the car that you've driven off the lot months ago. Very interesting times. Back on what was being discussed at the show was the topic of how people consume radio, and Jacobs Media put out some data from its latest tech survey. And what they do is they go to core radio listeners and try to understand their behavior. They found that AM and FM car radio still does make up a majority of in-car audio use, but these demographics tell an important story. They show the percentage of time spent in a car with various types of media. Baby boomers are the graph on the left and Gen Z on the right. And broadcast radio is shown in green. So if you compare the green slices in the two pies, you can see how much smaller the green is for the younger demographic. Young folks still use radio a lot too, but their slices for streaming and audiobooks and their own music are bigger. And remember, this is among core radio listeners, not the overall population. So you would read these as saying that even among core radio listeners, in-car consumption leans more toward digital and satellite now. Overall, they found that the macro trend of people tending to hear more and more of their radio over digital channels continues to grow. Shown here, it's the percentage of time that core radio listeners spent with a favorite station in a typical week via over-the-air in blue and digital platforms in green. That's streaming and smart speakers and that kind of thing. And the trend here is unmistakable. Now, at the show, One Media Systems gave an update on its proof of concept project that shows how audio-only services, including radio station content, could be delivered over ATSC3 television. One Media is the tech development arm of Sinclair Broadcast Group. They say that with an efficient Fraunhofer codec, one next-gen television station could add 40 or even 50 channels of audio-only content within its bandwidth, in addition to its existing services. Of course, you would need compatible reception devices, but if this were to take off, it would be another way for radio companies to distribute their product. Liam Power is a systems engineer at One Media. He's shown there. He won the NAB Best Paper Award for his presentation. Also in the Broadcast Engineering Conference, David Layer of NAB gave a presentation about field tests of higher power HD radio FM. You may know that NAB and Xperi have asked the FCC to update the formula that it uses for allowing stations to operate up to digital power levels of 10 dB below carrier. David Layer says that the field tests confirmed what they thought, which was that the current formula that the FCC uses is too conservative, and that the proposed change would allow increased digital power without creating interference problems. The map is from his presentation, and that request is still pending at the commission. David also was on the receiving end of some news. The Association of Public Radio Engineers gave David Layer its Meritorious Service Award. It said that in the midst of the dramatic changes in our industry over the past several years, David has been a great and supportive colleague to the public radio engineering community. His service to all broadcasters has been exemplary. And APRE has a new president. Scott Hanley is on the left. That's him. Ralph Hogan, one of the founders, is on the right. The Dream Foundation grants wishes for terminally ill adults. David Whitehead is a former radio serviceman in the U.S. Air Force and later chief engineer for the Cesar Chavez Foundation's radio network. He also worked as an audiovisual equipment repairman and telecommunications agent. He wanted to attend the show, see products, and catch up with friends. He and his wife, Bonnie, attended with support from the NAB and the Dream Foundation, and they met with Curtis Leggett of the NAB. The North American Broadcasters Association released a guidance document. It's about hybrid radio and metadata, and they issued a list of recommendations. They say FM stations should, at least, adopt static RDS tools and ideally both static and dynamic metadata using RDS. They also encourage AM and FM stations to adopt HD radio IBOC hybrid mode, as well as use metadata best practices. And they called on everyone in the industry to reach out to car makers on this issue of AM reception. It's an interesting report, and it provides a really nice overview about what hybrid radio platforms are and who the players are. Companies like, or organizations like Radio DNS, DTS AutoStage, Radio Player, Radio Line, and Q. So if you're curious, or if you even know something about some of these, but not about all of them, you might want to check the document out. It's free. You can download it at that link, nabanet.com, nabanet.com. The chairwoman of the FCC was there. She announced a Future of Television initiative. It's a public-private effort led by the NAB to boost the rollout of next-gen TV. But I include her here because, on a less friendly note, the NAB just a few days later asked a federal court to force the FCC to complete its 2018 quadrennial review of ownership rules. The NAB accuses the commission of basically a perpetual slow roll. That was the NAB's words, perpetual slow roll. And it said the commission is flagrantly ignoring the mandate of Congress by not completing the review of rules from 4 years ago. And it's already started the next one, the 2022 review. They always start a review at the end of the calendar year. So 2022 review is what the commission is doing now, but they didn't finish the last one. And the NAB is saying, how can you expect us to comment, much less how can you change the rules if we don't even know the outcome of the prior review? So now they've gone to court to try to force it. On her end of things, Rosenworcel probably doesn't have a lot of motivation to try to hurry things along, given that there's a political deadlock on the commission right now, and it's hard to get stuff done. The NAB, the backstory here, of course, is that the NAB is in favor of easing further the rules that limit how many radio stations a company can own in a given market. Not every broadcast organization is on board with that. You know, iHeart and Salem have given some pushback about the details. But this is the general thrust of it, is that the NAB wants to ask the commission to increase those subcaps or do away with them. And that would be the outcome of this media rule review. Also in Vegas, but not attached to the show, the SBE expanded its Spring Ennis workshop to a 2-day event. It's now held separately from the NAB show technical agenda. Fred Baumgartner and Andrea Cummins are there in the center welcoming the crowd. The workshop featured two tracks, one on the basics of RF and one on next-gen television. And they drew more than 100 people. On the TV side, they collaborated with the ATSC and offered a special SBE certification exam for those that had the prerequisites to take the ATSC 3 certification. So I think we can expect to see more of this, and it's interesting that they now do this separate and off-site from the NAB. The SBE also elevated Stephen Brown of Woodward Radio Group to the membership rank of fellow. He started his broadcast career in 1975 as a part-time announcer and engineer at WAPL AM and FM. He plans to retire next year, and as you probably know, fellow is SBE's highest rank. The show drew an estimated 65,000 people. That is up from last year's final total of around 53,000. So the show is working its way back. Much of the radio activity was in the West Hall, but there were a number of radio booths in Central, and there will be again next year. So that, you know, anybody who was hoping that everything would consolidate for radio in one hall, that's not happening. But definitely West was the majority. By the way, next year, the North Hall of the Convention Center will be closed during the NAB convention. There's actually a 2-year renovation project going on. They're going to redo the facade of the convention center. They're going to renovate the North Hall. And then the year after that, the Central Hall will be closed. The show remains a world-class place for networking and visiting with industry friends. I just realized this, someone who didn't attend last year would have gone 4 years. If they went this year, that would have been the first time in 4 years that they would have had a chance to see their friends in Las Vegas. By the way, I like that photo in the top center. That's Jeff Williams of Yellow Tech on the left visiting the history banners, and that's his dad, Jack Williams, famous for his role at the old PRNE. Turning to the exhibit floor, several transmitter manufacturers had new products. Nautel showed a new iteration of its flagship FM line. They used the slogan, "Just add audio," and the phrase is appropriate given how much is built into this line. The GV2 integrates all HD radio components, including the Xperi Gen 4 importer, exporter, and XGen implementations for the HD radio encoding, the station logo, and the artist experience. It also locks FM and HD signals to eliminate HD FM blend drift problems, and it has processing. Omnia for Nautel is built in to handle FM and HD audio processing, and it provides live wire AOIP inputs. Nautel says, as long as there's an IP audio feed available at the transmitter site, it's pretty much audio in and RF out with no external boxes, processing, GPS, or time alignment required. Nautel is hoping that the simplicity of this line will encourage a fresh wave of HD radio adoption. And I think that that theme that you heard Jeff mention earlier too about simplicity of operation by non-technical staff will continue to be one we're going to hear a lot about. I also like this picture just because of all the great shirts. WorldCast Systems is the parent of the Acriso transmitter line, and it showed its expanding family of FM transmitters. This is the AIO line. It's now available at power levels of 100, 300, and 600 watts, as well as 1 kilowatt. And it's all in 2 rack spaces. US pricing starts at around $6,700. This is a good example of a theme that we're hearing a lot among manufacturers: more software, less hardware orientation. In this case, the transmitter is available with an integrated Automat RDS encoder, multiband processing, and APT IP decoder as software options. And it's also available with Smart FM. That's a software technology that's been around for a while now, but it's taking a higher profile. It uses artificial intelligence, in fact, to manage the RF power levels dynamically. And the goal is to improve operating efficiency and drive down costs. WorldCast says you can get a lot of cost savings out of doing that. In fact, this year, the NAB just started an awards program to honor efforts of sustainability, and WorldCast was honored for its Smart FM technology. There has been a lot of activity in lower power compact FM transmitters. Gates Air rolled out a line of, these are air-cooled, solid-state, analog-only FM transmitters. That just showed these starting last fall at IBC. So this was the first NAB show where they showed these. Broadcasters who are looking to refresh their existing infrastructure in large regional and national networks are a key target for this line. Gates Air does a lot of business like that. The line includes power levels of 50 watts, 1 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, and 10 kilowatt versions. The 1 kilowatt transmitter starts at $7,900. Gates Air plays up its power density in its 5 rack unit chassis and an overall efficiency rating of up to 76%. One of the things this transmitter line supports is N+1 configurations, which are helpful for those large national network operators. And this is available with a option of an Intraplex IP Link 100 module that enables direct receipt of contributed FM content instead of needing an external codec. It was, by the way, the first NAB show since Gates Air was acquired by Thomson Broadcast. You might remember that we talked last year, if you went to the show or if you were present for this presentation last time, that they had just announced last year that Thomson Broadcast would acquire Gates Air. So this was the first show since then. The new CEO is Barbara Spichek, and she was at the show. Speaking of ownership changes, it's been 5 or 6 years since Elenos acquired Broadcast Electronics, and fans of BE have been watching to see how the brand would evolve. And now we just learned tonight from Jeff that you're going to be hearing more about this from BE if the planned event comes through. The company made an important move this winter when it brought in Rich Redmond as its president and COO to be responsible for operations here in the Americas. And then Tim Hardy joined as senior RF systems architect. Both of those guys are well known to transmitter buyers from their roles at other manufacturers. So I suspect we can expect BE to continue to take a higher profile. At this show, Elenos unveiled a transmitter platform that they call Quick Block, and it is highly, highly modular. Using simple building blocks, you can scale a transmitter from 1 kilowatt to over 50 kilowatt for analog and HD radio. You can see some of the modules there in the photo at the left. And the platform can also be used to make transmitters for other digital radio standards and for television. They showed a 50 kilowatt model in a single 19-inch rack. That's in the picture at the right. And they really played up the potential savings in space and leasing. Everything from controllers, power supplies, RF amps, and exciters are all hot swappable. And the engineer can get a module test fixture to help you with field repairs and troubleshooting. So you can see the direction that these are going. It wasn't just transmitters, though. Audio processing is a category with a lot of new entrants. Orban will begin shipping a new generation of processors soon, with the Orban Optimod 5950 first off the assembly line. The company is calling this Bob Orban's first clean sheet of paper processor design since the 8400. And notably, it is a hardware box. The company does offer other options, processing as software, Linux-based servers, cloud-based platforms. We hear a lot of talk about these kind of things and products being offered that way, but Orban says many of its customers still prefer hardware. This is a single rack device, as you can see, and it has MX peak limiter technology, subharmonic synthesizer, and multipath mitigator. It uses a touch display, and it can be controlled remotely via any HTML5 web browser. It's for FM and DAB or HD radio broadcasts, and there is an optional micro MPX interface. List price on this, $99.95, just under $10,000. It's sold on the street for about $9,200. Also in processing, Omnia showed the Forza. This should please those folks who think that radio stations don't pay enough attention to the quality of their audio streams. It's a software-based processor for streaming uses, as well as HD radio and DAB. And for those users who may not have a lot of technical skill, they include a lot of presets and a single-page user interface with smart controls. It does also have a LUFS loudness controller, which is helpful for streaming applications. The word Forza, by the way, means force, strength, or power. The Forza multiband container is a software product. It's available as a buyout or yearly subscription. The buyout is $1,295, and the yearly subscription is $695, although pricing may vary depending on certain requirements. More processing is from Sound 4. They were in the Broadcast Depot booth. They showed a virtualized version of their flagship audio processor. This is called Impact CL, which I assume means cloud. This is for HD radio, DAB, and other digital applications. It has features like 2-band AGC, stereo FX, tone FX, declipper, 6-band processor, 4-band EQ, and a final brick wall limiter. It's just notable to me how many of these products demonstrate the trend that's really been growing quickly of radio functions being offered as a service. So here, in this instance, you buy this processing by paying a monthly service fee. Even more processing, though, Wheatstone added a hardware FM processor to its Audio Arts family. It's called the Lion for FM and HD radio. Upper left is the picture at the upper left. This box is about $2,500, and they promise professional on-air quality even from highly compressed material. It also has stereo enhancement, RDS, and system link for transporting MPX and HD signals across high-speed data links. Wheatstone has another box lower right there, also in the Audio Arts line. That's the Voice One processor. It promises a warm, robust vocal presence. It's a WheatNet IP audio network device with routable inputs and outputs and logic control. In particular, Wheatstone highlights the sibilance correction in the Voice One. It's $1,500. Wheatstone, by the way, also featured a cloud version of its Layers Stream module running on Amazon Web Services. There's the cloud again. This software includes stream provisioning, audio processing, and metadata support. They showed streaming instances running in the cloud that could be brought up and torn down rapidly and controlled through a user interface like a browser, very convenient. This is part of the Layers software suite, which also has modules for running instances of FM and HD processing and mixing in the cloud or in your on-premise server. Virtualization is a trend that continues to make itself felt in other parts of the air chain. TELUS Alliance showed the Axia Altus. This is a virtual mixing console that promises to bring the features of a traditional console to your desktop, your tablet, or your smartphone running in a web browser. It provides mixing and it integrates with TELUS broadcast phone systems. This is delivered as a Docker container, and it can be used on or off premises with commercial off-the-shelf hardware. In particular, TELUS says this tool is a good solution when you need to deploy quickly, like setting up a temporary studio, building a disaster recovery center, or doing a remote broadcast. You can choose to pay for it on a one-time basis or on an ongoing basis. Something I've been particularly interested in is the new broadcaster portal that Xperi rolled out for the DTS AutoStage system. You know, DTS AutoStage, as you probably know, is the hybrid radio platform from Xperi, and they've been working to get it into as many car dashboards as possible, and also to get broadcasters to sign up for free and provide the appropriate metadata because it relies on that. Now, Radio World has partnered with Xperi on a couple of ebooks about this platform, but I think there's a lot of reasons to be impressed with it. It's all about trying to keep broadcast radio looking current and visible while adding features like personalization and lyrics. And one of the big selling points is the analytics that a hybrid system is supposed to feed back to you via the IP pipe. So the launch of this portal was a really important step in the rollout for DTS AutoStage. One of the things the station can see on the dashboard are these heat maps of where listeners were when they were listening to your station. Here's a station in Syracuse. The orange and yellow zones show the most intense listening, and this is over a 1 month period of Mondays through Fridays, as you can see there under just above the map on the menu. It says select days, Mondays to Fridays, so you can pick different ranges. And you can see too that there were other hotspots, maybe not where you would have expected them to be. These can be overlaid with retailer locations that are in proximity to the station's audience. So it is obviously a very powerful potential sales tool. Here's an example in Prague, and when I click on the animation, you can see that the user can zoom in and get a closer look. Remember now, the data that's coming back and creating these maps is based entirely on the actual listening by people in cars that have DTS at AutoStage. So the bigger the platform penetration in the market, the more accurate the data is going to be. There are currently 52 models from 5 manufacturers that have DTS AutoStage, but Xperi says a lot more are coming. In fact, the company just said on its earnings call in the last week or so that it is about to announce a deal with a major Japanese car company to carry DTS AutoStage. One other chart from that is this day part analytics tool where you're able to see listener activity hour by hour. Xperi takes pains to say we're not competing with Nielsen here, and this is more of a complementary tool, but these are powerful displays. And they point out that the station gets the data back a whole lot faster than they would with Nielsen. And again, because car makers can update vehicles over the air now using software or USB, thumb drive, it's so much easier to quickly update car infotainment systems. So a company like Xperi doesn't have to wait for that really long lead time for new cars to get out necessarily. Some other samples from the floor. Tie Line unveiled 2 MPX codecs. These offer composite FM multiplex codec solutions for network distribution of FM MPX or micro MPX signals to your transmitter. Sending transmission ready FM composite, of course, allows your station to keep your audio processing and your RDS gear at the studio. MPX1 is for transmitting a composite STL signal from one station with return monitoring. That retails for about $4,000 US. MPX2 can transport 2 discrete composite FM MPX signals, and it costs around $6,000. These products are not shipping yet. They're due to ship later this year. Digital Alert Systems was at the show, and they were talking about the pending software updates for its DASDEC systems. Part of the reason that software updates are necessary is to comply with that deadline that the FCC has issued for the clarity and accessibility of EAS messages. Digital Alert Systems actually has 2 updates, and one of them was just literally announced this week, if not this morning. I forget if it was today, but this week. The first one is out, and the second one will be coming next month. The cost varies depending on which version of DASDEC you have and whether you're on their software assurance plan. Other manufacturers as well will have to update software. Sage Alerting, for instance, they didn't have a booth, but I know they have a software update coming next month for Index that will cost most users $159. So whatever your EAS vendor is, you should check with them to make sure you get the required updates before December. We also learned right before the show that antenna manufacturer Shively has been acquired. In January, Howell Labs had told us that they would move away from the broadcasting business after 40 years to focus on new growth opportunities. They acquired the company from Ed Shively himself back in 1980. The buyer is American Amplifier Technologies, which was an exhibitor at the show. Stephen Wild is the CEO. They make and design and build broadcast and industrial electrical products like transmitters, RF power meters, audio processors, and antennas. So Shively products will now be manufactured in Sacramento, California, rather than in Maine. On a personal note, it was sad to come to an NAB show for the first time and not meet with Gary Klein, who passed away in January. Gary was an associate and a good friend of mine, as a few of his friends and colleagues as well decided to gather and remember Gary, and the NAB kindly let us use one of its conference rooms. Gary touched many people, and even though he was a hardworking and a pretty intense professional, it was the stories of his friendship and personal warmth that stuck with me the most. The group looks kind of somber here, but in fact, it was a lovely and uplifting hour to swap stories. This was just before many of us headed to the ham radio reception. A fun, interesting project that Gary would have appreciated was this pop-up radio station that Josh Bone and his partners created called Max Radio in the Max Connect booth. This was a full-blown studio programmed live throughout each day of the convention and focused on the show. And it was broadcast on a Beasley HD2 FM channel in Las Vegas and also streamed online. This entire studio was WheatNet IP with wide orbit automation, and a tie-line gateway was used for STL and remote contribution. The IP audio left the show floor via the gateway using the Max Connect wireless service, the prioritized LTE service, and headed back to Alabama to the Max Connect offices. It was received there on a tie-line Genie distribution codec and routed through a Wheatstone system to be sent over to the Surfer Network streaming encoder. And it was also sent back via the Genie to another codec at the Beasley station to be uploaded to the HD2. It was a fun project. Radio World was a media partner, and I was an on-air guest at the end of each show day. And of course, one business person that we need to do business with is Jeff Schick. Sprite Media was at the show in the Broadcasters General Store booth, talking all about the cool
really,
stuff
really
they do.
good.
Yeah, they featured Sprite Presenter, which is a visual presentation that greets your station guests throughout the day with time-sensitive greetings. Good morning, good afternoon. It also provides the latest weather and provides information feeds, news, and social media highlights. And it can look pretty jazzy with motion backgrounds, motion titles, and wipes. And it can be customized with your logos, fonts, and colors. And this is a pay once product, no licensing or data fees, as Jeff will tell you.
Are you available for commercials?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Very affordably. There's more that I could tell you about this. There's so many products. There's a new and better streaming monitor from Innovonics. Dielectric has something new called a switchless switch. Can't even say that. Enco and its Chat GPT tool sets, and there's a new electromagnetic field meter from Aldina. You can look those up. Most of them are on their individual websites, or drop me an email. I do want to give a hat tip to one of your colleagues in New York, Steve Schultes of New York Public Radio. He's the latest recipient of Radio World's Excellence in Engineering Award. Normally, we try to present the actual award during the NAB show. Steve wasn't able to make it to Las Vegas, but we're proud of him as our current honoree. I was just emailing him today, letting him know I was thinking about him. We're also proud that one of our past Radio World honorees, Mike Cooney of Beasley Media Group, was honored by NAB itself. He was chosen to receive the NAB Radio Engineering Achievement Award. We featured Mike on our cover recently, and he's shown here with his boss, Carolyn Beasley, after accepting the award. I'm sure many of you know Mike and appreciate what a suitable choice he is. And if I can put in a plug, Radio World recently published our 100th free ebook. These cover a range of topics that will be of interest to this audience, and recent ones include the evolution of AOIP and STLs in the 21st century, as well as a roundup of new products. The one I'm working on right now, that'll be out in the next week and a half or so, is about how everything seems to be turning into a service-based offering, and it's literally called Everything as a Service. You can find those at radioworld.com/ebooks, and you can also subscribe to Radio World itself. We have this subscribe link right there, tinyurl.com/rwmag, but you just go to our website and click on subscribe and it'll take you there. It was a busy week at the show, much to see. I hope I've given you a bit of a flavor, and I sincerely do mean it when I say that I'm honored to be asked to talk with you guys. So thank you for taking me in.
Paul, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. You really covered a lot of ground, literally, and I'm sure you were on that Tesla ride back and forth between the West Hall and Central a few times.
Absolutely. Well, I just, I'm sure you got the sense of it, but the conversations around AI alone can take hours, and it's a fascinating topic, and no one really understands or knows where it's going to end. But you know, you have that sense. There have been certain times in my time in the radio technology industry where you knew something big was going on. One of them was when the PCs first came in, you know, and of course that changed everybody's thinking. And what's it going to mean that we have computers in a radio station? And I'll never put my computer on a Microsoft PC, and you know, those my radio station. So this is one of those times when it feels like something really important is happening right in front of us.
Yeah, I think it's scaring a lot of folks, and it's still kind of infancy to see where this is going to go. You know, I said it before earlier to you, but I think this is just another way of doing automation. So I worked at a station in 1984 that was automated, and I never met any of the disc jockeys that were on the large form cartridges. And yeah, people may lose their jobs, or just, you know, you may now have a more interesting overnight than having music play without anyone saying anything besides the name of the station. So it'll all be revealed. So I am yet again going to hold up the latest issue of Radio World. Also, I know you guys have some email that you send out weekly or daily. You want to plug some of those?
Well, yes, we do. And if it's free and it's daily. The Radio World Smart Brief is available. You can sign up for it again on the Radio World website under the subscribe page. Look for Radio World Smart Brief. It's a morning newsletter. It comes at 7 o'clock. It's a roundup of news from the last 24 hours, as well as pointing you to some of the more interesting stories from our latest issues of Radio World. And of course, we have special projects and products in between. But the things that we would like everybody to be aware of, again, all these are free. There's, you know, Radio World itself, the edition, the daily Smart Brief, and then our ebooks. And if you've signed up and provided your email for the newsletter, you would get the ebooks anyway. And we always have a note in there that we've published a new one. And they're all free.
I do want to share something with people who were afraid of AI. This is in Stable Diffusion. I put in happy people, and this is what came up. It should be more like scary people. Yeah. I'm going to open the floor now. If anybody has any questions, put on your microphones and ask Paul. We got a couple minutes here.
Oh, Paul, I just want to thank you for the recap. I feel like we could stay home now. It's like
that's you're still going, Keith. You got to work.
Yeah. Well, that was awesome.
Thank you. No, you and I had a chance to talk in your booth, and it just brought back some memories, because for me, having been a broadcast equipment salesperson for 2 different companies before I came to Radio World, my experience of the NAB show was always as an exhibitor, and it is brutal to be an exhibitor. I just standing on your feet saying the same thing over and over, even if you owned the company, you know, just it's boring as heck after a while, and I found it very demanding. So being able to walk around the floor and talk to people and learn new stuff all the time, for me, is kind of heaven. I have a great deal of respect for what the exhibitors do.
Interesting, coming from someone that's done it so long. That seems to be a theme that I saw on the internet, where guys, even seasoned veterans, were like, "Here it comes," you know, and like the boogeyman.
That's right.
Well, you did a terrific job. We appreciate you visiting with us.
Thank you.
I say it every year at NAB. When I used to go to NAB to look for equipment, I would say it's like going to the zoo to look at the animals. But now being in a booth, I feel like one of the animals in a cage. Okay, anybody else want to comment or ask a question? Now's the time.
Yeah, particularly about AI. I'm curious to know what people think about it.
Yeah, Paul, was that clip that you played at the beginning, that was AI, correct? The voices?
Yeah, those were all synthetic voices. In fact, I don't know if I said this, but if you have an interest in these products, contact those companies, Futuri, Super Hi-Fi, and ask them to point you to their demos. Because like that little promotional clip that I played, those were all synthetic voices, pretty impressive. But yeah, when you listen to something that is freshly created, if you listen to them talking to each other, it's still not, to me, where it would fool everybody all the time. I think a radio person listening intently and critically might be able to tell the difference. So are you going to be able to put a full morning show on and have two AI hosts talking to each other, given that they can draw on local trending topics and stuff? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe that's not the use case. But would it work for drop-in liners so that you can walk away from your automation and have it sound intelligent about the weather that's happening? Absolutely. Absolutely.
I get a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is William. You mentioned something about Orban's multipath mitigator. What is the technology behind something like that? I have no idea how that could possibly work.
Yeah, I wish I was smart enough to answer your question, and I apologize that I'm not. But one of the things that I have to be, I have to be right up front about is I'm not an engineer. I'm a journalist, and I talk to people like yourselves who are smarter than me, and I synthesize a lot of information. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that those people are very accessible. Bob Orban was at the show for the first time since the pandemic, and Mike Pappas there is a very responsive guy. And if you were to drop a note to them and ask, you know what, maybe I'll drop a note to him and ask.
Hey, that would be nice. And I have a couple of other comments. I thought the most interesting thing you said was about the ATSC being capable of delivering like so many AM stations.
Yes.
That's one of the first greatest use cases I've seen for ATSC3, rather than, this stupid, extra data that you have to respond to back from your house over the internet. It seems like that use case provides so much continuity. And then I would like to tell Tesla to put a crystal radio in every car so that when you shut off the engines, you can actually listen to radio, AM radio with a crystal radio. They have plenty of amplifiers and stuff, and all they would need would be one crystal and a little tuning, and you get AM. So that's nothing in terms of the equipment cost in the overall finished product. So there should be an option for engine off AM radio.
There you go. There you go.
Anyway,
Let's take one more question.
I just want to pop in real quick because I'm going to have to bail. Paul, what you're doing and what Radio World is doing is immense. I'm always reading, and consistently I learn something, or I find a direction where I need to go to learn something more. So it's nice that you're there doing what you do to allow me to do what I do. So thank you for covering so much. And I'm sure you have your challenges with resources, but you cover a lot of topics, you cover a lot of ground. We seem to do that when we're passionate about the business we're in, which we all are, unlike, say, Walmart employees. But I want to say thank you for what you do, what you cover. And I hope it will continue, and I hope you continue to get that advertiser support.
Well, thank you. Your words mean a great deal to me.
You're here. I concur with that, and I think everybody else does on this call.
Thanks for joining us. Please remember to subscribe to SBE 15 New York City.